The room appears fully formed before any deliberate attention arrives.
Perception settles into place without announcing its arrival. Details exist prior to being specifically observed. Light organizes the space before thought attempts to follow.
Subtle progression occurs before it is consciously registered.
The environment stabilizes prior to awareness confirming it.
Surface responses complete themselves before being interpreted.
Visual relationships settle into place before attention attempts to verify them.
Recognition trails slightly behind what is already present.
The scene completes itself before it is fully noticed.
Tension arrives a fraction of a second after alignment has already occurred.
The configuration exists prior to conscious acknowledgement.
Awareness confirms what perception has already finalized. Subtle adjustments occur before they are named. The present completes itself before you register its completion.
Visual continuity establishes itself before being consciously followed. Stability forms prior to verification. Consistency becomes apparent only after it has already been established.
The absence of change is recognized slightly after it has already occurred. You notice the room only after it has fully arranged itself. Perception leads, while awareness follows. The second before noticing passes unnoticed.
Awareness confirms a state that has already stabilized. The moment feels complete before you consciously arrive within it.
By the time you notice, everything has already been here.
The room appears stable, yet one directional cue no longer aligns with expectation.
Light settles into a position that attention did not anticipate.
Cause and outcome remain visible, though their connection feels slightly delayed. Orientation appears to have shifted before it was consciously registered.
Shadow structure follows a logic that does not fully agree with itself.
Light begins favoring a direction that the window does not sufficiently explain.
Reflections reference positions that feel subtly reassigned.
Distance stops functioning as a reliable guide. Surface responses duplicate without a clear initiating cause. Directional certainty weakens while the environment remains calm.
Light organizes itself into patterns that feel unrequested.
Object posture implies adjustment without visible movement.
Depth cues quietly exchange their expected roles.
Expected gradients reverse without announcement.
Correspondence between form and result begins loosening.
Single inputs begin producing more than one visual outcome.
Spatial logic bends slightly without collapsing.
Orientation shifts feel slightly ahead of awareness.
Separation between object and surface begins quietly eroding.
Light begins referencing the object rather than its origin.
Distance stops predicting clarity in expected ways.
Hierarchies of visual attention quietly dissolve.
Alignment inconsistencies accumulate without escalation.
Causal direction becomes quietly ambiguous.
The room continues functioning while becoming harder to intuit.
The room responds as if its reactions arrive slightly after they should. Visual effects continue beyond the moment that seems to generate them. The room appears to carry a trace of a moment that is no longer present.
Conflicting time cues coexist without resolving into a single explanation.
Cause and effect stop agreeing on when events actually occur. Expectation begins arriving before observation confirms anything has changed. Visual information begins repeating instead of refreshing itself.
The moment feels present without feeling fully current.
The room carries a subtle visual memory alongside the present image.
More than one moment appears to occupy the same space.
Effects no longer conclude when their causes appear to finish.
Recognition begins arriving after perception has already completed its work.
Time indicators quietly disagree about which moment this is.
The present begins to feel slightly retrospective.
Object and environment stop feeling entirely simultaneous.
Change begins feeling buffered rather than immediate. The scene gives the impression of having already occurred.
Temporal reference points slide without direction or announcement. Visual memory overlaps with immediate perception.
The scene feels slightly behind itself.
Completion no longer follows change immediately.
The present stretches without clearly advancing. The room behaves like a memory that is still being written.
The scene appears to wait for itself to fully arrive.
Time no longer occupies a single position within this space.
The room presents itself as complete, without indicating whether this moment has just begun or quietly continued.
Visual order settles into a condition that no longer requests interpretation.
Elements align into relationships that feel sufficient without explanation. Orientation stabilizes without reference to earlier variation.
Balance returns without clarifying what preceded it.
Light resumes behavior that no longer invites evaluation.
Visual complexity reduces without implying an ending. The environment settles into a readable condition.
Orientation holds, without encouraging reinterpretation.
Cause and effect appear reconnected without comment.
Spatial logic resumes without drawing focus.
Continuity replaces variation.
The room no longer implies progression.
Nothing within the frame suggests alteration.
The scene feels sufficient without asserting finality.
Stability persists without indicating duration.
The present loses distinction from other moments.
Temporal markers lose relevance when repetition feels exact. Recognition replaces curiosity. Nothing appears unresolved.
The environment offers completion without explanation.
Nothing suggests a next moment.
The scene feels complete in a way that implies recurrence.
Observation no longer produces discovery.
By the time you notice, the cycle is already ready to begin again.